weather was beautiful on Lake Eufaula today, but Saturday it was a different setting. Wind warnings were in effect. This boat is being used as a spotter. 65 feet below it is the boat the Miller family was in. When the boat started sinking, 19-year-old Jerry Miller managed to swim to shore. After making it to land, he ran to a nearby house and called for help. Later that morning, lake patrolmen found Mrs. Miller and their daughter, Amy. Their bodies had floated to shore. Lake patrolmen and volunteers began searching for Miller and his 7-year-old son Saturday. They started again Sunday but had to stop because of high wind warnings. The search resumed today.
About 9:30 this morning, one of the boys who was using our little porcupine, the weight with the hooks on it, came up with a little fish basket, some monofilament line, and in about 10 minutes they hung another new nylon rope. And we tied a buoy marker onto that, and the end that was in the water was secure. We knew it was tied onto something. The divers went down this line and found the boat. And consequently, when they found the boat, we found what we were expecting, the child that was supposedly hung in the boat. We found the young boy and retrieved him and got him out.
Authorities say the mother and daughter may have died from exposure in the lake's 40-degree water. The 7-year-old boy drowned inside the boat. Authorities think Miller drowned as he was trying to rescue his son. Lake patrolmen will start looking for Miller's body again tomorrow. Ben McCain, Action 4, Lake Eufaula.
The Northeast Side apartment complex was not equipped with smoke detectors. Officials say even if it had been, it probably wouldn't have saved the life of the 3 small children. They were not old enough to understand an alarm. Early this evening, Brad Edwards talked to spokesman Phil Cooksey about fire and children.
2 things can happen. For one thing, children left alone can start fires themselves. We don't believe that happened in this case, but it can. And secondly, if a fire starts for whatever reason, they're less able to deal with it. I mean, a 3-year-old or 2-year-old child really have no conception of fire, smoke, even of heat for that matter. So we had, by the way, 2 of our victims last year involved children being left unattended. And I realize sometimes it's impossible to avoid it, but we all have to be reminded of what a risky, dangerous situation it is.
Cooksey says of the 10 fire deaths so far this year, 5 have been children. The cause of this morning's fire has not been explained. So Cooksey says children under 7 and the elderly suffer more fatal fires than any other age group. Ted Brown, Action 4.
Is approximately 39 and 2 questions, if there are any.
Would you yield to Senator Lamb?
The expense of a rebate. The so-called shortfalls in the Human Services Department, which are going to be even greater in the future due to the fact that the new administration has promised cutbacks in federal aids to the states. We're going to find ourselves, if we're not very careful, in some serious problems if we should be so bold as to repeal our taxing capability. It was my idea that the better plan would be to give the taxpayers a rebate on a one-time proposition this year, and then in the years to come, if we find ourselves in the enviable position that we will be able again to do that, we can consider it on a year-to-year basis.
I do not believe that there is a surplus of funds in state government, that I'm in the position of having to tell the folks that the reason there can't be a road built from Red Oak to Leakwire is simply that we don't have the money. And if we have the money to afford this refund, we have the money to build that road. I have to tell the people who drive a 2-lane Highway 69, the most heavily traveled non-interstate route in Oklahoma, that we have not four-laned that road because we have not had the funds.
This is the worst accident that could have happened on a dry and windy day like today. Two brothers were driving on Douglas Road northeast of Edmond when they noticed that trash in the back of their pickup was burning. When they stopped to put the fire out, it spread, burning their truck and the grass nearby. But that was just the beginning. Firefighters from 8 departments were called to the scene. Winds were gusting up to 30 miles per hour, and before things were under control, 640 acres were scorched and lifeless. It all began at 1:30 this afternoon, and tonight flames are still flickering across much of the area. It could be a long night for some firefighters. They're watching the smoldering fires closely because most are beyond reach of their water, and they'll have to put them out with dirt. The people who own this land are also keeping close watch. Several fences have been broken, so they're worried about their cattle, and they're afraid the fire may ruin what's left to feed them.
We have some alfalfa hay in a corral over there, but that's what we're watching now is the fire over here that's coming in here that doesn't destroy the hay because it's several $1,000s worth of hay over there.
Much of this area is grazing land, but some people do live out here. Tonight they can rest easy because firefighters will be keeping watch, and they say for now the danger is over. Jane Boone, Action 4 in northern Oklahoma County. This is a scene most of us hate to run across on the highway. It usually means someone is hurt, and many times the victims are children. In fact, several hundred children are injured on Oklahoma highways each year. But one thing could prevent those injuries: car seats and infant restraints. If they're used properly, they can save lives. If this child was held in someone's lap, or if she stood up on the seat, she could fly forward if the car stopped suddenly. But this car seat will hold her securely.
The charms through here.
The study showed that only 9% of all children in Oklahoma use these car seats. Doctors and highway safety officials say car accidents are becoming the biggest killers of young children.
A 10-pound child at a 30-mile-an-hour crash, if you're going 30 miles an hour and you stop sharply, a 10-pound child will become 300 pounds when he goes through the windshield or into the dashboard, which is fatal to a child.
All car restraints must be crash tested. That's now required by law. And if you're looking for the perfect car seat, you'll see that you have several models to choose from. So what you want to do is pick the one that's most convenient for you. One trick is to start your child out early. Make them feel like they have their own seats in your car. Be sure you know how to put it in and to take it out before you buy it. And be sure your baby is in there securely to keep them happy and safe in your car. Jane Boone, Action 4.
January and February, the tax commission has not been 18 and 20%. But we intend to carry forward this effort to bring a meaningful tax relief to the consumers at the checkout stand in both houses of this legislature and through every avenue possible and open to us.
Clifford Henry Bowen, accused of being the trigger man in a contract-type killing of 3 people, is free tonight. It took $225,000 bond money to get him out of jail until his March 12th trial date. Bowen was freed briefly once before on these same charges, but only for $75,000 bond. The bail bonds company that came up with the money explains just why it's confident Bowen will be back for his trial.
Well, the primary reason we're not concerned about Henry Bowen is the fact that his attorney, Raymond Burgers, had a long-standing relationship with our company. And anything that Mr. Burger requested from us, he would get. Mr. Burger had complete confidence in Mr. Bowen's ability to appear in court when required.
The company says that every once in a while people do jump bail, but it feels that just won't happen in the case of Bowen. Ed Stewart, Action 4, downtown Oklahoma City.
It's been 6 days since Irving Slutsky was shot to death in this northeast Oklahoma City variety store. That's long enough for the wheels of justice to begin turning, but not nearly long enough for the store's owner to forget what happened. Doris Hill is trying to get her life back together, but it isn't easy. Last Wednesday, 2 robbers walked into her store and shot an elderly metal dealer to death. As 72-year-old Irving Slutsky lay dying, the assailants put the gun to Mrs. Hill's head. But the 35-year-old grandmother pleaded for her grandson's and her own life. The killers left after Mrs. Hill promised not to call the police for 30 minutes, a promise she did not keep. As soon as the murderers left, Doris ran for help, but it was too late to save Slutsky. Mrs. Hill is trying to get her business back to normal, but a bullet hole just a few feet from her grandson's playpen serves as a constant reminder of what happened last Wednesday.
Look like I tried to put my mind on something else, and next thing you know, I go right back to it. Especially being in the store all the time, I have to pass by, over there where I seen him laying down, and I won't never forget it, but I'm going to try to get it out of my mind. Just because, I have to go on.
Perhaps young James is the lucky one. He's too young to remember what happened. Doris Hill says she'll never be old enough to forget. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in northeast Oklahoma City.
But in 1982, this state faces a crisis as a consequence of the prison overcrowding which plagues our state today and will become even more serious in 1982. We have before us a report prepared by Larry Meacham dated February 26th of this year, in which the conclusion states, and I quote, "However, without immediate relief, the department will not be able to maintain its current compliance with the federal court order." And what does that mean? That means simply that Oklahoma's commitments to its correctional facilities are out of control.
A recent study done by Abt Associates in Cambridge, Massachusetts, has shown that all prison construction from 1955 to 76 found inmates within 2 years, and within 5 years were at 130% capacity. Oklahoma would have thought that 5 years ago that if they built a 50% increase in their population bed space, that they would not have a need for additional space. It's my belief that if we build 6 more prisons, that within 2 years and 5 years we will fill those up and we will be right back to where we are now. That there is just no change to that pattern.
Sponsors of this morning's Anti-Klan conference were surprised at the turnout. More than 70 people of all ages and colors came to talk about ways of counteracting the KKK. People here hope to build an anti-Klan network in Oklahoma through religious groups and other organizations because they believe the Klan is gaining too much power. and they want to join together to work against it.
But you're talking about a strong coalition, you know, a multiracial coalition around the tactics of combating the Klan.
These people have more anger for the Ku Klux Klan than they do fear. But when atheists said they would march at the Wichita Mountain Refuge this spring, KKK members announced a countermarch, and many people feel that is terrorism.
The atheists announced that they were going to call off their demonstration for the fear that the Klan would perpetrate some kind of violence against them. That's what I mean by terrorism, an organization that has a reputation and in fact engages in violence, then intimidates people from asserting what they believe are their constitutionally protected rights.
The people here believe that meetings like this are important, and they plan to have more anti-Klan activities because they believe the KKK is a threat to the people of Oklahoma, and they want to do what they can to put a stop to it. Jane Boone, Action 4 in East Oklahoma City.
Betty Rogers Wilson has had a date with the same man every Sunday for the past 23 years. Now, the man does not pick up Mrs. Rogers at her home. She must walk the 1.5 blocks to his house.
Come to the church in the wildwood.
But she doesn't mind. Her weekly date is with God at the Billy Hooten Memorial Methodist Church. Mrs. Rogers began attending the church back when Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. She hasn't missed a single Sunday since. The pews were packed today as friends and families gathered to mark Betty Wilson's special day.
And as we make this special recognition to our beloved member, Betty Rogers Wilson, we do pray that your spirit and your guiding hand will be upon us, that this will be a day of commemoration, a day of rejoicing.
Governor Nye couldn't be at the church to deliver the proclamation in person, so instead a church member read the declaration proclaiming March 8th, Betty Rogers Wilson Day.
1981.
At nearly 90, Mrs. Wilson's perfect attendance record is remarkable. She says she's had some help.
I think the good Lord gave me strength to come. Without his help, I couldn't have come. I would like to all my pastors of the church, and it's a family to me. I want to be at church here the last Sunday I'm ever in this world.
Scott Wallace, Action 4, Northwest Oklahoma City. Action 4, Northwest Oklahoma City.
Several months ago, health officials started surveying Oklahoma lakes to determine if any of them were contaminated with undesirable chemicals. When Lake Hefner was surveyed, officials found chlordane in catfish and carpsuckers. Carpsuckers are commonly known as buffalo fish. The director of the Oklahoma City County Health Department said he'd be surprised if anyone has eaten enough of the fish to become seriously ill. But that didn't stop him from issuing a warning.
We're concerned that the levels in those two species of fish exceed the FDA standard for chlordane in fish flesh. We recommend that individuals not eat catfish or carpsuckers from Lake Hefner at this point. We're really not concerned so much about the acute effects, but perhaps the long-term effects if they were to eat it for a long period of time.
Three witnesses took the stand for the prosecution this morning. Oklahoma City police officer Dave McBride gave testimony linking Clifford Henry Bowen to convicted murderer Harold Behrens. The next witness, Jack Zumwalt, was Behrens' former lover. District Attorney Bob Macy was trying to prove that Behrens was afraid that Ray Peters, a drug dealer who worked for Behrens, would talk and spill the beans about Behrens' drug ring. After one more witness, District Attorney Bob Macy rested his case. All told, 9 witnesses for the prosecution had taken the stand, but only 2 of them had linked Clifford Henry Bowen to the scene of the crime. District Attorney Raymond Berger will call his witnesses when court reconvenes at 1:30 this afternoon. Reporting from the county courthouse, Sue Lauer, Action 4.
About 1 out of every 4 students in the Oklahoma City school system rides a bus to school as part of the system's 15-year-old desegregation plan. The district is no longer under a federal court order. Instead, federal civil rights monitors keep an eye on the system. But even if the federal push to integrate local classrooms through busing were dropped tomorrow, school administrators predict there would be no change in Oklahoma City school policy.
We've made too much progress with desegregation to take that kind of a step back. So I would be against reversing the clock and going back 15 years and having all black and all white schools in Oklahoma City.
Many people feel integrated schools offer a bonus to the students. It teaches them how to get along with each other, how to survive in the real integrated world. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Northwest Oklahoma City.
The newspaper ads for Raging Bull make a big point about the 8 Academy Awards nominations that the movie has backing it up. They seem to suggest that this is supposed to be one of those full-figured motion picture legends. Well, figures can lie sometimes, and this might be one of those cases where 2 + 2 does not equal 4. It's the story of Jake LaMotta, the boxer, and it follows his career up into the boxing ring and up to the championship. Then, of course, there's his subsequent downfall. But during the course of his career, he earned the title, The Raging Bull, and that's where the name of the story comes from. One of the award nominations for this show is Best Cinematography, and I have to agree with that nomination, even though a lot of people do not like black and white film. Another nomination is for Best Supporting Actor for Joe Pesci, and I have to agree there too, because Pesci is the only character in the entire show with enough depth to make you really care about what happens. The rest of it is shallow, weak, a loser, and nice black and white pictures and only one good character are not enough to save a losing fight in the final rounds. But then again, the ads don't promise a knockout movie, only one with 8 Academy Award nominations. For Action 4, I'm Charles Schnitzer.
There's going to be inconvenience to the traffic, particularly during the rush hour periods, in that the contractor will have to close one lane at a time in each direction periodically in order to do the project.
Okay, today's subject is the MX mobile missile system.
Now, for those of you who have just gotten back from the moon or from Nebraska, here's a thumbnail sketch of what it's about. The Pentagon wants to build 200 miles of railroad track out in the middle of the desert. Trains carrying 200 missiles with nuclear warheads follow the track and hide the missiles in bunkers so that Soviet satellites won't know which bunker the missiles are in. The price tag for this project? $30 billion. No, that's not misspelled. That's billion. The most costly construction project in the history of this country at a time when the administration is desperately trying to cut the budget. Now here's another idea. It's not my idea, but a writer's. He points out that America needs to vastly improve its rail system and mass transit. The government's going to be spending $30 billion on a railroad system that doesn't go anywhere. Why not spend the money on our existing railroads? Take New York City, for instance. They have at least 200 miles worth of subway tracks. Just tack another car onto each train with a missile on it. Granted, the subway system is filthy and disgusting, but a fraction of that $30 billion could clean it up considerably. The missiles could be fired up through manholes if the need ever arises.
To see if you can actually make...
And think of the troops it will take to guard a 200-square-mile stretch of desert, at least 2 divisions. Put them in the subways with M16s and you will solve the crime problem underneath New York. And those poor guys won't get lonely out in the middle of the desert. Or, better yet, we could just distribute the missiles throughout the entire nation's railroads, each little train carrying a missile. Nobody rides them anymore anyway. That much money could probably replace every worn-out track in the country. Britain and Western could become a launching pad. But the best part is, since the trains never run on time, not only will the Russians not know where the missiles are, neither will we. Ted Brown, Action 4.
He had a pitch up that.
Or bleeding or swelling around the female sexual organs. So practically, as a matter of fact, you might be surprised.
First of all, the idea that castration is going to make the man unable to experience sexual excitement or have an erection is simply not true. Beyond that, many of these violent, dangerous individuals already are very insecure, frightened men underneath. And so there will be, very predictably, a percentage of this population who would accept castration, find that even more threatening, get out of prison even sooner, and be even more violent than when they went in. No, this is not a solution.